Okay, so last time we were doing this, I had this paper up and we had just talked about the looking at the document through the abstract and how to alter some of the text in the abstract, the title, to assign the authors and the copyright statement and page numbers and stuff of that nature. Now what I'm going to do is just briefly go over inserting text into the rest of the document, into the main text portion. Okay. Uh, of course, later on, I'm going to have a video here that actually I'm going to go over and I'm going to sit down and do an entire paper, so you see the process in action. But I want to go over each of these areas so that you have at least something, you know what these things are. So when you come down when you scroll down from where we were just discussing the abstracting keywords and how to put the abstract in there, and that in the abstract, if there were bolded statements or underlines or italics, you're going to need to put those in there. And also things of this nature. This is a plus minus sign, uh, and you may have to insert some of these special characters. I have a PDF document that has tons of special characters on it, which you will receive. If you haven't already, ask me for it. Also, some of these special characters are actually, you can find in here by going through some of these pull down windows. And one of the easiest, fastest way to find it is to just write into the Google search engine plus minus in a plus minus sign in LaTeX. You will come up with every different way you can do it, and there is not just one way to make these symbols. That's because depending on which one of the packages are installed on your LaTeX document, it can determine what way you actually make these. Another thing, you can just email me and I usually know already, or I'll go look it up and get it for you. So here's the abstract, here's the keywords that we just got done doing, keywords. This document has been published already, but we're just going over it. After you get through the keywords, you come to something that says article contents. Below this, that actually starts the entire article. And when you make a PDF, uh, I'll skip that. We don't need to talk about that yet. Uh, of course, you're going to see this line here that says begin multi-columns to two column. That's telling the system that at this point, all this text is in the two-column layout like we see over here. Okay? Now, here we have something called a section, and it says introduction. Notice that on this, in the document here, we just have it typed in plain text. But over here, it's automatically being converted into bold and small caps. That is in that master structure document. The code is already written that tells to do that. After that, you'll see that we have the text here copied in. Now, when I copy text in here, I do it one paragraph at a time. And the reason I do that is because actually, when you do it that way, you end up reading the whole paragraph and finding errors and things of that nature. And also, it's actually easier because it gives you sort of a starting and an ending. You feel like I'm starting the paragraph, I'm ending the paragraph. Now on to the next step, to the next paragraph. That works for me. That doesn't mean you have to do it exactly this way. However, you'll notice that there is not an indent here. And there a lot of the structure you see over here is not present over here. That's because it's all automatically programmed. Now, coming up to the top, this indent, which you see right here, is automatically placed by the LaTeX language. You don't need to go in like we did with Word and say, hey, is this the correct number of spaces? Did the author hit a full tab or a half tab? Was their tab at 10 spaces or 5 spaces or 2 spaces? It makes no difference. When it gets onto this document, it will be right. Occasionally, there will be issues with this when you go and you look over, when you ground truth the PDF to see if everything's right. Sometimes you'll find a error in the indent. Sometimes you'll find an error like there's a space between paragraphs, and that's something that isn't typical. I'm not going to go over. If you have the problem, I may have you just send me the document and I'll tell you how, and then I'll look at it and then tell you how to fix it. So here we have Eastern box turtles. Terrapin Carolina had to be italicized. To do that, I had to highlight it, and I clicked the italics button. Technically, there's no reason an author couldn't do this. They really couldn't. This is so simple. I really believe that any author could sit down and do the text on this. But thus far, we haven't asked any authors to do it. Although I've got this video open to the public because I think some authors may just as soon do it themselves and save us some time. So we go through here. We've got this stuff here. All of this is fine, and then when we get to here, we have a citation. This citation happens to have a hyperlink in it, and so what I needed to do, here's available from, I needed to add this code around it. Okay, little things like that, you just got to type it in. If you type in the slash URL, then and then you put the close, I don't remember what these are called, if there's some kind of a bracket, it'll automatically recognize that that's a URL. Okay, and so then you skim through all the rest of this paragraph, and then what you'll do is go back to the Word document, copy the next paragraph, and paste it in. You'll notice that right here we have a yellow like warning sign. Don't even worry about it. Okay, it's telling you the spaces here, it doesn't need to be here, but it really is critical if someone's making other kind of documents with LaTeX. This is very forgiving for what we're doing. You can just ignore that. If you have a problem come up, then you can get a hold of me and say, hey, what's going on? Again, this paragraph, the same thing. Just skim down it. I don't think there's any scientific names here. There could be special characters, of course, and when those come in the line, we can correct them. And you just go down. Now, at the end of the introduction, we'll hit the next section. Now, this is key because what this does is in the PDF, PDFs will actually have a little place where you can click and go directly to the materials and methods or directly to the results and skip over parts. So that's part of why this is here. If this is not here, PDFs can't do that. So here you've got materials and methods. Again, that lines up down here. And you see that we have our subtitle here, right? Study site. On the left, you'll see that all I've done, now technically this was originally, they tried to program this in, but it got kind of complicated. So we just said forget it. So to get, here's a real, a thing for you to be aware of. First of all, these little subtitles, all you do, you put them in brackets as shown here, and what you have here is the text. This is text boldface, which of course is up here. If you see the line number 123, right across, right next to it is the boldface button. That'll do that. We'll boldface it, and then this is the text. Then, whoops, just a second. This is a revert button that I'm going to push that says undo. There, my error's undone. Then you have the text italics button. You want the text italics inside the boldface. If you go the other way, it doesn't always work properly. But effectively, this is what you'll have, and then you just paste, you just put the word radio telemetry into here, because when you sometimes, again, sometimes the boldface brackets will not encompass this term properly, because you also want this to be inside those brackets. Now, while I'm here, 3 hyphens in a row are an M dash, EM. That is the kind of dash we use right here. An N dash, EN, is going to be 2 hyphens long, and that's the kind that's used as a dash. And then we also have a regular hyphen, which would only be one of these. So just a point of something that you actually do use a lot. Scrolling down this section, we of course, here they've been using Eastern box turtles. We don't mandate that the author uses the common name or uses the scientific name in the text. However, I'm going to bring up to the governing board that we might want to mandate that they use the common name in the text in order to save time and effort while doing this part of the formatting, because then they'll always be using the common name. Now, some species don't have a common name, and that's understood. Okay, then they'll have to use the scientific name. But if we can get them to use the common name throughout the document, it's consistent then throughout the document. And of course, the first time they're going to have the scientific name, but if we can get them to do that, I think it'll be good. But I don't know what everyone's going to say, so we'll just find out. If they say no, it doesn't really, it's not a critical thing. It doesn't take a lot. It takes less time to go through here and italicize all the scientific names than it did to do half of the stuff we were doing in Word. It really just isn't that bad. So in here we also have a greater than sign. Notice that the greater than sign has been encompassed in little dollar signs. How you do this, of course, you can just type dollar signs, or you can go over here to the left where it says inline math mode. You click that, and it will go around the greater than sign, and that will make it show up properly. Now, that's just a basic thing. In the text, a lot of mathematical operators must have these dollar signs put around them. If you don't put them in there, a big error will show up and say that you haven't done it right. It'll tell you what's wrong. It'll highlight it and tell you it's wrong, and it'll highlight every time you've done it in the paper wrong. And that's great, because then you just sit here and go down and correct each one. It doesn't take that long. You don't have to go through this document and find out if every greater than sign is in the right place. The greater than sign will not even show up in the text if it does not have the dollar signs around it. So that's really important. Less than sign is the same way, as are a lot of other mathematical operators. Here, the percent sign, as you've seen earlier in this document, you've seen the percent sign used and then a space and then text. And it is a code. It actually tells the program to do something. Well, in this case, we're using the percent sign as a percent. So to do that, you just put one of these little slashes in front of it, and it'll be fine. Most of the time. It depends on the package you're using. If you have to alter packages, then things might change a little bit. Other than that, those are the main things you come across. Another thing you come across in the methods, in particular, is the alpha level. We require authors who are using decision theory to state what level of how they're evaluating a significance. And as we know, an alpha level can be a 0.1, it can be a 0.05. There's also the USGS's alpha value that they introduced that I personally like, is when you say it's 0.05, it's significant, 0.1, it's not, and in between is sort of a hazy area that it may be significant, but we have to, this might require further investigation. So to put the alpha sign, the Greek, you have to put it in this format, and it will put it up there. It'll put an alpha. As we see here, if I scan down in the document, there was our greater than sign that I mentioned, as well as the less than sign will be on the next page. Okay, I'm scrolling down. Actually, the next page. Here's our less than sign. Here's our percent sign showing up properly. In this alpha code, I just lost it. I'm trying to remember where it was at. It'll be in the data analysis section, which is right here. And if I scroll down here, I will see that here is the way the alpha will look. It'll look like that in the text. Looks really nice and crisp. You'll see a lot of people in Word try to put an alpha in there, and they'll have these crazy little, they're actually graphics files. They're not really text files, and so they end up being the wrong size and setting off the line spacing and all kinds of stuff we've had problems with this. We don't have problems with it anymore, because when they have an alpha there, we just paste in alpha, and we don't have to worry about it. So as you can see, those are in this particular paper, we see that percents are a big one. That becomes pretty much automatic. You just know it. Greater than and less than signs, you see a lot of. In this particular paper you do, and I think in most papers we run across them. Those are little things that you got to go tick, 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 but they're quick, because all you're doing is highlighting and hitting this button. Okay. Superscripts and subscripts, the same thing, and some of these very common fractional numbers are the same way. I'm not going to tell you about figures right now, but I will tell you that this is two figures, and that's what that text is, and one of those figures is right here. Okay, as you see, there is no picture. It's just some code, and that code is telling us what figure to use, and it's also telling us to center the figure. Okay, but that's all I'm going to say about it. The text, though, is done exactly the same as it was done in other places, and this is the text that goes right here. Now notice that some papers don't have any figures, and in that case you'll delete this from the document. In other papers they may have a lot of figures, in which case you may have to copy and paste this particular code again and again. But we'll talk about that when I do tables and figures in a later paper. It's just that we passed by it, so I might as well mention it. Another, you paste in your next one, and again you're dealing with scientific names here all over the place, an alpha value, some greater than signs, things of that nature. Really didn't need to repeat here, but they did, and we just didn't change it. So moving on to the results, some common things we see in the results. One of my favorites, one of my really true favorites about this software is that the X bar can be made. Any type of a symbol that has a bar over it. X bar, Y bar, A bar, P bar, whatever the heck you want to be at. Okay? Closed bar, open bar. That was a joke. Bar open, open bar. Okay. I know it was bad, but now you're going to go home and tell all your friends. As we look at this right here, we see that it has $2 signs. That was inserted using this, or just type them in, sometimes easier. And then we have the backslash, bar, and then we have an X. That means that will be X bar. So you have a lot more options here, because not only can you use X bar, which takes that's one character space rather than 4 for mean. Most of us like to use X bar better. So it really is nice. So here we can put in the X bars. This here's a plus minus sign for standard error or standard deviation, depending on what they're using. There are other types, and that's used quite a bit in this document. This here is an R square, and when you look at it, you do notice that the R square has been italicized by this text here. But it also has erased too. So as you see, if you don't want to go over here and hit this button, you can just type $, that little up caret, 2, and then $, and you technically have made an R square. But like I said, you can just push the button rather than remembering it. So R squared is a very common one that we have. A lot of plus minuses, a lot of means, and a lot of R squares are used in our papers because of the nature of the kind of papers they are. A lot of superscripts and subscripts. For example, here we have F, and it has its degrees of freedom, 2 different measures of degrees of freedom under the F. So this will be subscripted. And if we look over here on the PDF, let me scroll down here to the results just to show you how these look compared to what's over here. I'll scroll back up on this. Okay. Here we have the X bar typed in. Over here, what do you got? X bar. Looks real nice. It's a nice looking X bar. It doesn't need to be italicized. It's already going to be in that form. You can also do X bar. You can also do carets above them. Any kind of mathematical notation that uses a letter with some kind of thing over the top of it can be made, but you have to go to the list, and I have that list again. You'll have access to it. Then here are our subscripted F statistic symbols. You can see the 7 and 12 there. Those are the degrees of freedom. Then we have, of course, plus and minuses. Here's a lesser than sign. I'm looking for a plus and minus just to show you what it looks like. Even though you know what it looks like, it's just to show you that they look really nice. A lot of authors like to put a plus sign and underline it. That's not going to work. If you put a plus sign and an underline and you paste it into this program, first of all, it looks terrible. Okay, it's not good. Second of all, it violates the instructions for authors in the first place. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to go in and correct all those. You can go back to the author and say, hey, remove all your pluses with the underlines and replace them with a plus minus. They can use a plus minus with a hash mark if they want, a plus / minus. And then we can just do a search and replace function to replace this. So we could go over here to the search and replace, which we found last time on here. Go here to replace next. I always do replace next. Don't do replace all, because that way you know for sure what you're replacing. And then you hit that, and it'll give you a place here. This is what you're finding, and then you can replace it. I'm going to close that up. You can type in what you want to replace it with, and then you're just hitting buttons, plip, 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 okay? Now, that is pretty much, that's what you deal with in these documents. In the discussion, you don't have so many of those kind of documents. Now, of course, you also have the figures, and again, we'll talk about figures again, and here's some figures that are in there. The figures have to be done properly by the authors before they end up in here, okay? And I'm not going to worry about that. Here's another one that, yeah, get back to the results. Almost forgot. This little guy is another one, chi-squared. Chi-squared, this is how it's typed out, okay? Now, you'll have it. All you have to do is go down the list, okay? Or you can type chi-squared in LaTex, and it'll tell you it's just chi is all you write. So in the discussion section, there are fewer things to really worry about. Mostly things like here where this person's talking about an individual turtle, and they have the number sign. The number sign in computer language means things, so we have to put a slash before it to indicating we are using the character, not the language character. some number signs. And again, the number sign would have been called out as an error, and your computer would not have printed up a PDF on the right most of the time. It'll stop everything and highlight it and say, hey, and then every single number sign in this document will be highlighted. Or you'll do it again and it'll come up to the next number sign. Depends on what the error is, but these number signs all have to have these things in front of them. And that's a common one. If someone's got individual turtles, for example, that were telemetried. Beyond that, we're just seeing our typical text. And I mean, there's nothing to correct in this text here. I mean, it's longleaf pine is the tree they're talking about. That's basically it, right? Here's a little thing. This is urban/suburban development. Let's go down there and see how that shows up on here. Okay, going down here. Oops, it scrolled down on me. Okay, it's right here. It's in that last sentence of the document. Scroll up here, and we see that. Okay, that was the acknowledgments. That it is our results contribute. Yeah, that's the final paragraph. Okay. I'm having trouble seeing it. I need new glasses. So, okay. See here, urban, suburban. That's actually an error, right? That space should have been removed. We didn't remove it. Now, it might be removed in the PDF online. It may have been a correction. The author may have seen it, and I might have gone in and tweaked it on the PDF. But it's wrong here. That should have been corrected. So what I'm going to do real quick, just so it is corrected, I'll just go click, and then all I got to do is hit save, and it's saved. Now, as I scroll down here, we come to the acknowledgments. The acknowledgments are in their own section. However, you do have to put these italics around it, and then you'll get this. The acknowledgments do not have a space before them, and you'll notice that there is not a space in the PDF, but there is this section divider here, and that again, when the contents is on the PDF, it'll have a mark where someone can go directly to there. Sometimes, again, in the acknowledgments, there'll be a permit number. Honestly, the best thing to do is remove the number sign if they put it in there, because it's not necessary. However, you can put the backslash if you feel free. It's not a critical thing. That is the text of the document. Most of the stuff is little busy details. They're not real big deals, but when you start getting people who are doing a lot of math, you get a lot of these math characters, and so they can cause you some grief. And that's when usually you'll contact me and say, I've got a ton of characters and I can't find them all, and some of them I may have, some of them I may know, but generally that's what'll happen. The best thing to do is to do a web search first. If you don't find it and it's not on the PDF, then contact me, and I probably know where to look if I don't know it. In the next video, we'll talk about the literature cited. The literature cited actually isn't as bad as you might think, but that I was terrified of this. Some of this is automated, some of it is not. Okay, but we'll do that in the next video. So at that point, I'm going to turn off this video, and then I'll load it up on YouTube. It was only 28 minutes. Every one of these seems to be about a half an hour. Okay, so I hit